In this lecture segment, we are talking about the art of Spain during the 17th century. We'll focus on a painting of a saint and an intriguing portrait by Velázquez. Spain in the 17th century is struggling. Its earlier material success with overseas conquest had waned, and the country was having a tough time economically. High taxes and massive income disparity made it a hard life for many, and the rising middle class in other countries is absent in Spain. It's a deeply Catholic country and the home of the Inquisition, which means that artists will be concerned with making works of art suitable for the Counter-Reformation. Spain had close contacts with artists in Venice and had control over Naples in southern Italy, where Caravaggio worked for a time. The Spanish king also has control over portions of northern Europe, and works of art by Netherlandish artists were in the collection of the king. The combination of these factors means that we will see oil paintings, an interest in highly naturalistic detail, and tenebrism in Spanish art. We'll look at art in Sevilla and Madrid. The artist Francisco de Zurbarán lived most of his life in Sevilla and never left Spain, but by the time he's painting, the contributions of Caravaggio were well known, and we can see the filtered down influence of Caravaggio in this depiction of Saint Serapion, who was part of an order of friars who tried to rescue Christian captives from Moors. This is a depiction of him in the moments before his impending martyrdom. The painting was made for a monastery in Sevilla, specifically to be hung in a room where the monks would prepare deceased monks for burial. So its audience were monks, and it was one of many images of martyrs made for this space. Saint Serapion is easily recognizable as a particular type of friar from the order he belonged to, as shown by the badge that he wears. He is a regular-looking person, not a classical god, and looks much more like the regular types of people Caravaggio depicted in The Calling of St. Matthew. His figure is pushed up to the front of the picture plane, right in our space as a viewer. We cannot help but observe this figure, and we know how the story is going to turn out, that he will be martyred. The strong contrast of light and dark in the scene, the tenebrism, spotlights his figure clad in white. Looking at him is unavoidable. In the bottom right, Zurbarán signs and titles the painting on a piece of paper that looks like it has been pinned to the painting, a trompe-l'œil element. The clear depiction of a saint, position of the figure up against the picture plane, the illusionistic detail in the signature, hair, fabric, rope, the light-dark relationships all work together to create another Counter-Reformation work of art, giving us as viewers a spiritual experience, drawing us to the church. Zurbarán's friend Diego Velázquez had a different trajectory. He was from Sevilla, but became a court artist to King Philip IV in Madrid. The Spanish court was not a progressive body. It was very traditional and conservative and obsessed with status. His job was to please the court, and he did so. He traveled to Italy a couple of times and had access to the works of art in the king's collection. He made many portraits of the court, and the only female nude that was painted during the 17th century. We are focusing on a work of art he made for himself 4 years before his death, but one which the king happily added to his collection and displayed in his office, Las Meninas. The title of the painting means the Maids of Honor, and that is part of what is shown in this complex image. The scene takes place in a specific room in the Alcazar, or fortress turned into royal palace, in Madrid. We have a depiction of Velázquez painting on a huge canvas, with the Infanta Margarita, the heir to the throne, a couple of her mother's maids of honor, and other members of the court. At the rear of the image, we see a mirror reflecting the faces of King Philip IV and the Queen. Velázquez uses the lessons of art history and depicts the space using linear perspective, with a vanishing point here and a related perspectival construction extending into the secondary space here. He uses works of art on the walls and the lines of the ceiling as the orthogonals to construct the perspective. So what is happening in this complex work of art? It's an imagined moment in life at the palace, as if Velázquez was painting a portrait of the royal couple on this huge canvas, and the Infanta and her retinue entered the space. In this way, it's also a group portrait, a portrait of multiple identifiable people. It's also a bit of a genre scene, meaning a scene of everyday life at the court, showing us the specificity of everyday life at the palace. And he adds to this sense of presence and reality with how he applies paint to the canvas. In this detail of the Infanta, you can see his broken brushstroke. It is not the crisp linear painting we saw Van Eyck using. This is a painterly brushstroke, meaning that brushstrokes show you where the artist's hand has been. Think about the effect of this application of paint. It creates an interesting, diverse surface that seems active and filled with movement. The white dots of thick paint that he's applied to the flower on the Infanta's chest catch light and add to that movement, as if this child is about to swing side to side in her fancy bell-shaped dress. This is just a momentary pause in her constant movement, and in just a split second she'll race ahead to her parents, who may be having their portrait painted, thus prompting her to visit the room. He's captured an actual space and actual people in a naturalistic but at the same time invented and imagined image, and we as viewers occupy the potential position of the king and queen as the artist engages directly with us, looking at us as he works, making us part of the painting. So it's a group portrait, a scene of everyday life, and an artist's self-portrait. As we saw in Dürer's work, artists often use their work as expressions of their identity as artists, to reflect on their professions, which is probably happening here. The works of art on the walls are identifiable based on inventories of the palace art collection, and a couple of them relate to stories from mythology about artists making works of art to rival the creations of gods. He also shows himself in the midst of his practice, creating, claiming painting as a profession. He casts himself as a creator. But he's not wearing the clothes he likely wore when working, but nice clothes that were more an expression of his status. And the red cross on his chest was added later after he was, in essence, knighted, so the work communicates that status. He's also conscious of his work's place in art history and builds in specific associations with other works of art to give meaning to Las Meninas. We've seen before an artist who used a mirror to reflect the viewer's space, Jan van Eyck in the Arnolfini portrait. This portrait was in the collection of Philip IV and would have been available to Velázquez. Van Eyck was a renowned artist, and to take him on so directly in this work was likely a calculated move to argue for the status of his body of work. In many respects, this painting is a painting about painting. It's meta, about the act of creation and Velázquez's role as creator. But it's also a court painting during the 17th century and supports monarchy. The work's emphasis on the Infanta may have political ramifications, showing the continuation of the monarchy. In this way, Velázquez creates a work to support the monarchy, which was his job as a court artist. He also continues the trends of art we've seen in the Baroque so far. It's viewer involving, shows knowledge of art history and earlier works, especially Renaissance art. He also adds to our understanding of art in this period by creating an image that speaks to the status of artists as creators, draws from life, and supports monarchy.